Thank you very much, Mrs. Moon, and can I congratulate the Honourable Lady on an excellent speech to open this debate. She's done great justice to all of those who I know have travelled from quite a long way in order to hear this debate had in Parliament, and I thought she opened the debate brilliantly. It's also a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. It's unfortunate that I should be called so early in proceedings because I'm going to talk about something ever so slightly different, but very, very important to constituents of mine. My constituents, Tom and Jackie Luxon, were involved in a car crash with their then 2-year-old daughter. The force of the impact was so huge that the ISOFIX that the 2-year-old was travelling in broke, and she sustained life-changing injuries that initially had caused paralysis. She, amazingly, in the 2 years since, has recovered to some degree. But there is evidence that the person who hit the Luxons that day had been driving for 16 miles dangerously before the moment of the collision. And the reason that this incident was brought to my attention was that Jackie was 26 weeks pregnant at the time of the impact, and her baby, Grace, was stillborn as a consequence. Now, we're today debating whether or not there should be life sentences when dangerous driving is obviously the cause of the death of someone who is alive. But Grace, who was 26 weeks in gestation at the time of the impact, was killed, obviously, as a direct consequence of the impact, and the man responsible received 3 years and 7 months in prison for that. If Grace had taken just one breath when she made it to hospital with her mother, if she'd been delivered and taken just one breath, then this debate would have applied. We'd have been talking about whether or not that man should have been liable for a life sentence, or whether, as is the current situation, something less satisfactory. But in her case, she didn't take a breath, and 3 years and 7 months was all that could be served on that man for killing her. Now, PCO in Davis, who was the investigating officer for Avon and Somerset Police, wrote to me in despair. I hope he doesn't get in trouble for this with the Chief Constable, because he did exactly as a police officer should do and showed just how much he cared. And he wrote to me and said, "Myself and the Crown Prosecution Service looked into charging the driver with death by dangerous driving, but we hit a brick wall when we discovered that the Road Traffic Act 1988 does not recognise a healthy 26-year-old unborn baby as a person. Instead, we had to charge him with causing serious injury by dangerous driving, ×2, for the mother and for the daughter, with nothing able to be charged for the death of the baby." Now, Mrs. Moon, a couple of weeks ago, I was able to ask the Prime Minister a question about this in Prime Minister's questions, and the Prime Minister gave me a very considered answer. But the key thrust to her answer was the danger that any such discussion about the rights of unborn children leads to unintended consequences. That was the far as the Prime Minister went in her answer, and she's obviously talking about abortion law, and I agree with her that the impacts can be very, very challenging indeed. But Mrs. Moon, there is precedence, and it's great to see the Minister of State in his place, and as such a distinguished practitioner of the law, I know that he will see that there is an opportunity to get this right. In the Infant Life Preservation Act of 1929, a fetus is viable at the age of 24 weeks. That's what it says in the law. And there is wording in that act that is very explicit, that sets out clear exemptions, precisely so there are not unintended consequences of that definition. It's also worth noting that in that awful tragedy at Grenfell Tower, a stillborn child, as a consequence of that tragedy, was also officially recorded as a victim. So there is precedence. There are examples in law where it is possible to recognise the rights of an unborn child. And I beg the Minister that in considering the wider merits of the case that's put today in this debate, which is hugely important, it should be possible to give life sentences. It should be the norm to give life sentences for dangerous driving. Cars can be a weapon in the hands of the wrong people. But in the case of the Luxons, when their child was denied to them at 26 weeks gestation, and the punishment for the person responsible was just 3 years and 7 months, I urge the Minister to look beyond what we do for the punishment received by those who kill those that are living, and also look at the punishment we give to those who are stillborn as a consequence of these collisions. Thank you.